The night was heavy with smoke and noise. The alien marketplace stretched under a broken sky filled with strange lights. Merchants shouted, creatures growled, and desperate voices begged. It was a place where life had no value and hope was traded. For coins, in the center of the market, there was a wooden stage built from metal scraps. Chains clinked as slaves were pulled forward one by one. Some were strong, some broken, some young, some old. The crowd laughed, bargained, and mocked. Each soul was sold like a piece of rotten fruit. Among them stood a girl, small and fragile. Her eyes were dim, her clothes torn, her body weak. She did not cry, she did not fight, she only stood still. Her silence made her look even more worthless to the buyers. The auctioneer, a tall alien with sharp teeth, pushed her forward. This one, nothing special, he shouted. She can barely walk, can barely speak, worthless. The crowd roared with laughter. Some shouted cruel jokes. Others turned away. Sell her for scraps, one voice jeered. She is not even worth the chains she wears, another added. The auctioneer smirked, knowing this was true. The girl lowered her head, expecting nothing. Her life had been pain, and she believed it would always be pain. No one had ever looked at her with kindness. No one had ever believed she mattered. But in the shadows of the market, a human stood. He was tall, wearing a dark coat, his face hidden. He had been silent through the noisy auctions. His eyes scanned each sale with cold judgment. But when he saw the girl, something inside him shifted. The crowd shouted for the next slave. The auctioneer grew impatient. No one wants her? Fine. Take her for 1 coin or nothing, he growled. Laughter filled the air. Throw her away. Someone screamed, feed her to the beasts. Another shouted. The girl closed her eyes. She thought her end had come. But then a voice cut through the noise. A calm, steady voice. I will take her, the human said. The marketplace fell silent. Dozens of eyes turned toward him. The auctioneer blinked, unsure if he had heard right. You? A human? He asked, his voice dripping with disbelief. You want this worthless thing? The man stepped closer, his boots echoing on the broken floor. Yes, he said firmly. I will take her. Laughter exploded once again. Humans are fools. A merchant spat. He pays for trash. Another mocked. But the man ignored them. He tossed a coin. Shining in the torchlight, it landed with a sharp sound in the auctioneer's hand. The auctioneer shrugged. She's yours then. Human, take her and go. The chains were unlocked with a rough snap. The girl stumbled forward, confused. She dared not look at the man. Her heart pounded with fear. Why would anyone buy her? What did he want from her? The man did not drag her or strike her. Instead, he bent down slightly, meeting her eyes. Come, he said softly. His voice was different, not cruel, not mocking. It was calm, almost gentle. She hesitated, not trusting, but something in his tone made her follow. The crowd shouted insults as they walked away. Waste of money. She will betray him. She's already broken, but the man never looked back. He walked with quiet strength, and the girl walked behind him, chained, yet strangely free. For the first time in her life, she felt a question inside her heart. A question stronger than her fear. Why had he chosen her? Why would a human save someone who was sold for nothing? The answer was hidden in the shadows, waiting to be revealed. Asterisk. The night air outside the marketplace was cold. The human walked ahead with steady steps, while the alien girl followed in silence. The chains still clinked on her wrists, but the pressure of cruelty was gone. She did not know if this was another form of punishment or something stranger. The crowd's laughter still echoed in her ears. She had been called worthless so many times that even hope had died inside her. Now this human had taken her away, and she could not understand why. Her weak legs trembled with every step, but she forced herself to move. If she fell behind, maybe he would abandon her like the rest. At last they stopped near the edge of the settlement. A small transport ship waited in the dust, its metal surface scratched and scarred. The human turned to her. his face half lit by the faint glow of the ship's lights. "You are safe now," he said, his voice low but firm. The girl flinched at the words, for they sounded unreal. Safe was not a word she had ever believed belonged to her. He unlocked the rest of her chains and let them fall to the ground. The metal rang against the dirt, a sound that echoed like freedom. Her hands trembled as she rubbed her wrists, confused by this act. "No chains," he said. "Not with me." She stared at him with wide eyes, waiting for the hidden cruelty to reveal itself. But his face stayed calm, his eyes steady, not filled with greed or mockery. The girl finally spoke, her voice cracked and weak. "Why?" she whispered. The human did not answer right away. He simply looked at her as if he was studying something no one else could see. Finally, he said, "Because you were left to be destroyed, and I could not watch it." She lowered her head, unable to believe. "No one saves what is broken," she muttered, almost to herself. The man shook his head. "Then perhaps no one has tried hard enough." They boarded the ship, and inside, the air was warmer. The girl sat on the floor near the corner, afraid to touch anything. Her eyes scanned the room filled with strange lights, panels, and seats. The human moved with ease, starting the engine, the ship humming with power. She expected orders, threats, or chains again. But instead he placed a small container of water in front of her. "Drink," he said, simply. She hesitated. But thirst overpowered fear. The water was clean, fresher than anything she had tasted. For a moment she forgot she was nothing, and she drank like life was returning to her. The man watched silently, his hand steady on the controls. He said no more. And yet his silence was different from others. It was not filled with judgment, but with patience. The girl felt something unfamiliar, a space where fear did not grow. But her heart still whispered, "Nothing lasts. He will show his true face soon." As the ship rose into the black sky, the marketplace grew smaller below them. The girl looked through the small window. The place that had been her prison now faded into distance. Her chest tightened with fear and hope together. She asked again, almost begging, "What do you want from me?" The human's eyes did not leave the stars. "I want nothing," he replied. "I only want you to live." The words hit her harder than chains. Live. A word she had never been given. Live. A word she thought belonged only to others, not her. She curled into herself, not knowing whether to believe or fight. Her mind repeated old memories of betrayal. Every promise she had heard in the past had ended with pain, but this man's calm voice made her doubt her doubts. It was a dangerous feeling, dangerous because it was fragile. One spark of cruelty could shatter it forever. Hours passed as the ship cut through the endless dark. The girl closed her eyes, but sleep did not come. Her body rested, but her heart beat fast. She tried to guess his secret. Why would a human risk his reputation, his money, his safety, for a girl sold for nothing? The man spoke at last, breaking the silence. "My name is Elias," he said, "and from now on, you will not be treated like an object." She raised her head slowly, surprised that he even shared his name. Names had power, and no one had ever given her theirs so freely. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak. I don't have a name," she confessed. The words cut through the air like a wound. For the first time, Elias's face softened, a flicker of sorrow in his eyes. "Then we will find one for you," he promised, "because every soul deserves a name." The girl's chest ached with confusion. She wanted to shout that he was lying, that this was a cruel trick, but his voice was steady, his eyes did not turn away, and in that moment, she felt the faint spark of something she had never known. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of it, a seed waiting to grow if the soil was real. As the ship moved deeper into the galaxy, the alien girl sat in silence, her heart torn between fear and hope. And Elias, the human who had made the strangest choice of his life, wondered what fate awaited them both. For one decision had been made, and it would change everything. The ship drifted quietly through the dark of space. Inside, the hum of the engines filled the silence. The alien girl sat in a corner, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She was free from chains, but the chains in her heart were still heavy. Elias, the human, moved around the small cabin, checking the systems. He did not speak much, and yet his silence was different. It was not the silence of cruelty, nor the silence of judgment. It was a silence that gave her space, though she did not know what to do with it. Her eyes followed his movements carefully. Every time he walked closer, she stiffened, waiting for pain. Every time he spoke gently, she doubted it. Her world had taught her that kindness was only another mask before betrayal. At last Elias sat near her, not too close, not too far. His voice was calm when he said, "You can rest, you are safe here." She lowered her head, shaking slowly. "Safe does not exist," she whispered, her voice hollow. "Safe is a lie people tell before they hurt you." Her words carried the weight of endless wounds. Elias studied her face, the scars of fear carved deep into her eyes. He did not try to argue with her. He only said, "Then let me prove to you that safety can be real." The girl's chest tightened. Prove. She had heard that word before. So many had promised, and none had kept their word. She wanted to laugh bitterly, but the sound would not come. Instead, a memory rose inside her like poison. She remembered a night of fire, the sky filled with burning ships, her people screaming. Her small hands clutched her mother's dress as soldiers stormed their home. Her mother had shouted for her to run, but chains had caught her before she could escape. That was the last time she saw her family. Sold, beaten, traded, forgotten. Her worth measured only in how cheaply she could be owned. Tears formed in her eyes, though she fought to keep them hidden. Elias noticed, but he did not reach to touch her. He did not try to stop her from breaking. Instead, he let the silence stay, a silence where her pain could breathe. Finally, the girl spoke again, her voice trembling. "They killed everything I loved. They left me with nothing." Her eyes lifted to his, sharp and broken. "Why save me? Why waste your coin on a ghost?" Elias leaned forward slightly, his eyes steady. "Because you are not nothing," he said. "You are not a ghost. You are still here. And that means there is hope." She wanted to scream at him, to call him a liar, but something in his tone struck her deeply. No one had ever looked at her and seen more than a burden. No one had ever spoken of hope and connection with her. Her lips trembled, but no words came. She turned away, hiding her face in her arms. Elias did not press her further. Instead, he stood and walked toward the small food storage. He brought back a plate with simple rations. The smell of warm bread filled the air. He placed it near her without forcing her to take it. "You are hungry," he said softly. "Eat when you are ready." The girl stared at the food, suspicion. Battling hunger, she had been tricked before, fed only to be punished after. But her body ached with emptiness. Slowly, carefully, she reached for the bread. Her fingers shook as she tore off a piece. The taste was plain, but to her, it was a miracle. Her eyes stung again, not from the food, but from the thought that someone had given without taking. Elias watched her quietly, not with pride, not with pity, but with patience. Every bite she took seemed to push against the wall of her despair, and though the wall stood tall, a small crack began to form. When she finished, she whispered, almost too quietly to hear, "My people." They had names, stories, songs. She paused, her throat tightening. "But all of it is gone, erased, like we never existed." Her voice broke, and for a moment, the mask of silence shattered. She looked at him with eyes full of grief and fury. "Why should I live when everything I was is dead?" Elias did not flinch at her pain. Instead, he answered with a steady voice, "Because if you live, then your people are not gone. Through you, their story survives, their memory breathes. As long as you live, they live too." The word struck her harder than chains. Her breath caught in her chest. For years she had thought herself nothing but a shadow. Now this stranger told her she was the last flame of a fire thought extinguished. Her tears spilled, falling silently down her face. She did not try to stop them anymore. Elias did not move closer, but his voice softened. You are broken, yes. But broken does not mean worthless. Even shattered glass can still shine. The girl closed her eyes. For the first time she let the tears flow freely. And though her heart still carried the weight of loss, she felt a spark of warmth in the cold void of her soul. It was small, fragile, and terrifying, but it was there. She did not thank him, she did not trust him yet, but in her silence, a shift began. A soul once broken had taken its first step toward healing. The ship glided through the endless black of space. Stars shimmered outside like scattered diamonds, but inside the cabin, silence ruled. The alien girl sat near the window, her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes staring at the distant lights. She wondered if her family's souls were out there. Hidden among the stars, watching her, Elias the human adjusted the controls with practiced ease. He seemed calm, though his mind was not silent. He had made a choice in the marketplace, a choice that changed not just her life, but his own. Now, with every passing moment, he felt the weight of that decision growing heavier. The girl finally turned to him, her voice fragile but steady. Where are you taking me? She asked. Elias glanced at her, then back to the stars. To my home, he said. A place far from markets and chains. A place where you can heal. She lowered her gaze, her voice almost a whisper. Home. I don't know what that word means anymore. The pain in her tone struck Elias deeply. He did not try to explain. Instead, he answered simply, Then perhaps it is time you learn again. The ship drifted on, its engines a steady hum. Elias left the controls on autopilot and stood, moving to a small storage compartment. He pulled out a blanket and placed it gently near the girl. Rest, he said. The journey will be long. She stared at the blanket as though it were a weapon. Her past had trained her to doubt even kindness. But slowly, carefully she reached for it. When she wrapped it around her thin frame, warmth spread through her trembling body. She looked at Elias again. But this time her eyes did not hold only fear. They also held confusion. A silent question she could not voice. Elias returned to his seat, silent once more. The girl rested her head against the window. For the first time in years, her body relaxed. Even if her mind still fought the memories, sleep came to her like a thief, stealing her away from the pain for a little while. But dreams were not merciful. In her sleep she saw fire, chains, and screaming voices. She cried out, her body twisting under the blanket. Elias was at her side instantly, his hand hovering, unsure if touch would harm her. Wake up, he said gently. It's only a dream. You're safe. Her eyes shot open, wide with terror, sweat covering her face. She looked around, confused, until she saw him. Elias's steady gaze anchored her to reality. The nightmare faded. Though the scars inside her did not, she pulled the blanket tighter, whispering, I don't want to dream anymore. Elias's voice was calm. Then stay awake, and when you're ready, tell me your story. The girl hesitated, her throat tight. But something in his words urged her to speak. Her voice was soft, trembling like a broken string. My world was small but full of light once. My family laughed, my people sang. But it all burned. She stopped, tears rising again. I thought I had nothing left but chains. Elias listened, and patient. He did not interrupt, he did not rush her. The girl noticed this, and it gave her the strength to continue. And now, you bring me with you, but why? You risk so much and I don't understand. Elias leaned back, his eyes on the stars. Because I cannot look away from suffering, he said. Because no one deserves to be treated as less than human. Less than alive. His words left her shaken. No one had spoken of her life as something valuable. Everywhere she had been, she was treated as trash. But this man saw more. For the first time, she dared to believe there might be a reason she had survived. Not just to suffer, but to find meaning again. The journey stretched on, hours blending into each other. The girl found herself watching Elias more closely. He ate little, slept less, his focus always on keeping the ship steady. Yet there was No anger in him, no cruelty waiting to strike. Her mistrust still lingered, but alongside it, a fragile respect began to grow. As they neared the edge of a star system, Elias adjusted the ship's course. "We're close," he said. The girl looked out, her breath catching. Ahead lay a planet bathed in soft green and blue light. It glowed like a jewel against the black canvas of space. "That is your home?" she asked, awe mixing with disbelief. "Yes," Elias replied, his tone carrying a rare warmth. "My home, and now." "Perhaps yours too." Her chest tightened. The thought of belonging somewhere was almost too painful to imagine. She had always been unwanted, unclaimed, thrown aside like broken glass. And now this human spoke as if she could belong again. The ship began its descent, the planet growing larger. Clouds swirled, oceans glittered. Forests spread like emerald seas. The girl's heart raced, torn between fear and wonder. She whispered to herself, "A new beginning, or just another prison?" Elias heard her, but he did not answer. He knew trust could not be demanded, only earned. All he could do was guide her step by step into a future she had never believed possible. As the ship broke through the atmosphere, heat burned around them. The engines roared, shaking the cabin. The girl gripped the seat tightly, her eyes wide, and yet, in the chaos of descent, one thought stayed with her. She was no longer alone. The ship landed with a heavy thud on the outskirts of a quiet settlement. The alien girl sat frozen in her seat, her wide eyes staring at the strange world outside. Forests stretched toward the horizon, their leaves glowing faintly under the sun's light. Buildings stood in neat rows, crafted with steel and glass, filled with life and order. It was nothing like the broken markets where she had been chained. Elias powered down the engines and unfastened his belt. He looked at her carefully, his voice calm. "This is my home," he said. "No one here will chain you, but you must stay close to me." She nodded slowly. Though fear still twisted in her chest, freedom felt unreal. And the idea of safety was something she still could not trust. The doors opened with a hiss, and fresh air rushed in. The girl stepped out carefully, her feet touching solid ground. People walked by, some carrying goods, some guiding children, some busy with work. For a moment, she thought perhaps this world was kind. But then the stares began, eyes followed her, whispers spread quickly. "Is that an alien slave?" One voice muttered, "Why is she with him?" Another whispered sharply. Children pulled closer to their parents. Men frowned, women shook their heads. The girl shrank under their gaze. Pulling the blanket tight around her shoulders, Elias walked beside her, his expression calm but his jaw set. He ignored the whispers, guiding her through the streets with steady steps. But every stare felt like a blade against her fragile spirit. Her heart pounded, and she whispered, "They hate me. They see me as dirt." Elias looked down at her, his voice firm. "They do not know you. They only see what they were taught to see. But that does not define you." Still, the hostility grew. A man blocked their path, his arms crossed. "You brought that here?" he demanded, his eyes narrowing at the girl. "She is nothing but trouble. Aliens like her bring war and misery." Others gathered, nodding, muttering, agreeing. The girl lowered her head, her body trembling. She thought Elias would abandon her now, under the weight of so many voices. But Elias stepped forward, his voice steady and sharp. "She is under my protection," he said. "No harm will come to her." The crowd murmured angrily. "Protection? She is a danger." One woman shouted, "She belongs in chains." Another added. The girl felt tears burn her eyes, shame and fear crushing her. Elias did not back down. "You see a slave," he said firmly, "but I see a survivor. Judge her by her actions, not by your prejudice." His words carried weight, but not everyone listened. Some turned away, muttering in anger. Others lingered with suspicion. The girl clung to the blanket, wishing she could disappear. As they moved past the crowd, she whispered, "You shouldn't fight for me. I am not worth their hatred." Elias glanced at her, his voice softer now. "You are worth more than their fear." they reached his home. A modest place near the edge of the settlement. The walls were sturdy, the windows clear. The door opened with a quiet creak. Inside, it was warm and simple, filled with the scent of wood and metal. The girl stepped inside slowly, her eyes scanning everything. For the first time, she was in a house that did not feel like a cage. Elias set a small fire in the hearth and handed her food again. "You don't need to hide here," he said. "This place is yours as much as mine." She held the food in her hands, trembling. "No one has ever said that to me," she whispered. Elias did not answer, but his steady presence was louder than words. That night, when darkness covered the world outside, the girl sat by the fire, her heart heavy. She remembered the whispers, the hatred in the eyes of the people. It reminded her of the marketplace, of the voices that had called her worthless. She wondered if she would ever escape the judgment of others. Elias sat across from her, watching. "The flames. They will not understand at first," he said, as though reading her thoughts. "But time can change hearts, just as it changes stars in the sky." She shook her head, tears sliding down her face. "They will never see me as more than trash." Her voice cracked, and she covered her face. "I don't belong anywhere," Elias's voice was strong but gentle. "Then belong here with me. Let the world think what it wants, but do not let them decide your worth." His words settled in her chest like a seed, small but alive. She wanted to believe, though fear still strangled her. That night she lay on a soft bed for the first time in her life, the blanket warm, the pillow gentle against her head. But even as sleep pulled at her, she whispered to herself, "If the world hates me, maybe one soul is enough." Her eyes closed, and though fear lingered, hope, fragile and trembling, stayed with her in the dark. The days passed slowly in Elias's home. The alien girl learned small things each day. How to eat without fear, how to sleep without chains, how to breathe without waiting for a blow. Yet the whispers outside never stopped. Every time she walked with Elias through the streets, eyes followed, lips muttered. Suspicion clung to her like smoke. At night she would sit by the fire, staring into the flames. Her thoughts always circled back to the same fear. "This peace cannot last. Something will take it away," she whispered to herself, and deep inside, she believed it was true. One evening, the test arrived. A loud knock shook the door, sharp and urgent. Elias opened it to find 3 men from the settlement standing in the cold. Their eyes burned with mistrust. "We warned you, Elias," the tallest one growled. "That alien doesn't belong here. She'll bring trouble. She'll betray you the first chance she gets." Another added. The third man pointed toward her shadow in the corner. "She should be locked up before she harms us all." The girl froze, her heart pounding. Every word stabbed at her, reminding her of chains, of cages, of cruel laughter. Her hands trembled, and part of her wanted to run, to escape before Elias could agree with them. But Elias's voice was steady, his eyes unshaken. "She stays," he said firmly. "She has harmed no one, and she is under my care." The men scowled. "You'll regret this," the leader warned. "When she turns on you, don't say we didn't speak." They left. Slamming the door behind them, the girl stared at Elias, her voice breaking. "Why? Why defend me when they hate me? Why risk yourself for me?" Elias looked at her with calm determination. "Because trust is not built on fear. It is built on choices, and I choose to believe in you." His words shook her. No one had ever chosen her before. No one had ever believed she could be more than broken. But could she believe it herself? The next day, the true test came. The settlement was attacked by raiders, scavengers who preyed on weak colonies. Sirens wailed, smoke rose. People ran through the streets screaming. The girl stood by the window, frozen with fear. Elias grabbed his weapon and turned to her. "Stay here, lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me." Her heart pounded. She wanted to obey, but something deep inside whispered that running would be safer. If she left now, no one could chain her again. No one could hurt her through Elias, yet, as she looked into his eyes, steady and unwavering, something held her back. Elias rushed outside to fight alongside the defenders. The girl paced inside, her mind a storm. Voices from the past screamed at her, "They will betray you. You are worthless. You will always be alone." Her hands touched the door, ready to run. But then another voice rose inside her, softer, quieter, yet stronger. The voice of Elias. "You are not nothing. You are more than chains. You are worth believing in." She clenched her fists, trembling. Instead of fleeing, she turned away from the door. She searched the house, finding a small blade Elias kept hidden. Her breath shook, but she held it tightly. For the first time she thought, maybe I can fight. Maybe I can protect instead of running. Outside, chaos raged. Elias fought against two raiders, his strength holding but his body tiring. One raider slipped past him, heading toward the house. The girl saw the shadow move through the doorway. Her fear screamed at her to hide, but something else pushed her forward. The raider burst inside, snarling. The girl stood frozen for a heartbeat, her knees weak. But as he raised his weapon, she moved with a cry torn from years of pain. She struck with the blade. It was clumsy, desperate, but enough to drive him back. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her body shaking. She thought she would fall, but she stood her ground. Elias rushed in moments later, finishing the fight. His eyes landed on her, holding the blade, trembling but unbroken. For a moment, silence filled the room, broken only by her ragged breaths. Elias's voice was soft, but filled with pride. "You stayed," he said. "You fought." Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were different. Not only of fear, but of something new strength. "I didn't run," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but there was power in it. "For the first time I didn't run." Elias stepped closer, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "And that is the beginning of trust," he said. "Not just mine in you, but yours in yourself." The girl's chest ached, but in that ache she felt something growing, something stronger than fear. She realized that Elias had not saved her only with his choice in the marketplace. He had saved her with his faith, his belief that she could choose too. And tonight she had. As the fires outside died down and the raiders fled, the settlement would whisper again, more suspicion, more anger, but none of it mattered as much anymore. For she had passed her test, and though broken still, she was no longer only a shadow. She had begun to fight for her own light. The night after the raid was heavy with silence. Smoke still drifted in the air, and the settlement bore scars of the attack. Burned walls, shattered windows, and tired faces told the story of survival. But inside Elias's home, a different story was unfolding. The alien girl sat near the fire, the blade still resting on the table beside her. Her hands trembled when she remembered the moment she had stood against the raider. Fear had gripped her, yes, but she had not run. For the first time in her life, she had chosen to stay. That choice echoed inside her like a heartbeat. She whispered to herself, "I am not only broken." Elias returned from helping the townsfolk rebuild, his clothes dusted with ash. He set his weapon aside and sat across from her, his eyes steady. "You fought well," he said, his tone calm but filled with quiet pride. The girl lowered her head, unsure how to answer. "I was afraid," she admitted, her voice cracking. "I thought I would die. I thought I could not stand. But I did." Elias nodded slowly. "Courage is not the absence of fear," he said. "It is choosing to stand even when fear is strongest." His words settled deep into her heart. For years she had thought courage was beyond her reach, but now she realized it had always been there, waiting. All it had needed was someone to believe she could find it. The days that followed were not easy. The settlement still whispered, still doubted, still judged. But now when she walked beside Elias, she no longer lowered her head completely. Her shoulders were still fragile, yes, but there was a spark of strength growing. And though the people looked at her with suspicion, some eyes began to soften. They had seen her stand in the raid. They had seen she was not only a burden one evening. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elias and the girl stood outside, watching the sky burn orange and gold for the first time. She dared to speak a thought she had buried. "You gave me life again," she whispered. "If not for you, I would still be in chains or worse." Her voice trembled. But she did not stop. "I want to live, Elias. I want to live, not only survive." Elias turned to her, his eyes soft. "Then live," he said simply. "Live freely, live with strength, live as yourself." The words pierced her heart. Her throat tightened, and tears welled in her eyes. Not tears of despair this time, but tears of something new, hope, fragile but growing. That night she dreamed again, but it was not chains or fire. She dreamed of stars, endless and shining. In the dream, she stood among them, not as a slave, not as worthless, but as someone whole. When she woke, the memory of the dream clung to her. For the first time, she did not fear the morning. In the days that followed, she began to help. She gathered wood, carried water, cleaned the house. The tasks were small, but they made her feel useful. Each act told her that she was more than a shadow, and when Elias thanked her, even for the smallest things, she felt warmth inside that no fire could match. The whispers of the settlement never fully vanished, but slowly, some began to see her differently. They saw her carrying supplies, helping rebuild walls, protecting children during storms, and though many still doubted, others began to nod quietly in respect. One evening, Elias gave her a small carved pendant, shaped like a star. "This is yours," he said, "because even the smallest light can shine in the darkest sky." Her fingers closed around it, her eyes filling again. "Then I will shine," she whispered, "not because I am perfect, but because I am alive." Elias smiled faintly. "You were never worthless," he said. "You only needed someone to remind you of your worth." Her heart swelled with something she had never felt before. Belonging. It was fragile. It was new, but it was real. And so the story of a girl once sold for nothing changed. No longer a shadow, no longer a broken soul waiting for chains. She had found her beginning again. Not through miracles, but through choice, through courage, through one human's belief. As the stars rose above the settlement, glittering like hope itself, she whispered to herself, "I am not nothing. I am someone, and my story is not over." Elias stood beside her, quiet but steady, and together, they watched the sky. Two souls, once strangers, now bound by something greater than chains or blood, bound by trust, by courage, and by the belief that even the most broken can rise again. It was not the end of her journey, it was only the beginning. A new beginning that could change not only her life, but perhaps the galaxy itself.